116 pages. I actually think it worked out, the story worked out the way it was supposed to. Although it's not the way Mormon thought it was going to be, or Joseph Smith thought it was going to be, until we had the problem with the 116 pages. I want to go back to the story of complexity for a minute. So this section of the book is very complicated. You know, and part of the Nephite nation is actually destroyed. The remaining part joins Zarahemla. You find the Mulekites. Where are the Mulekites? Who's Mulek? Son of King Zedekiah. King Zedekiah was the king when Lehi went out to preach in Jerusalem. So he's the king of Jerusalem. What lineage would he have been if he's the king of Jerusalem, by the way? What tribe? David. Probably descendant of David, right? But of which tribe? Judah. So all of a sudden we have Josephites on this land with Lehi and Ishmael's family. Then all of a sudden now we've got a group larger than the Nephites, the Mulekites, or of the tribe of Judah most likely. But we don't know who came with them. He might have had Phoenician sailors with him. I mean, for all we know, that's one of the speculations, is the Phoenicians brought him across the ocean that way because they were the great sailors of the day, and Lehi came across the other ocean. So what's my point? My first point is that there's tremendous evidence that the Book of Mormon is true from its very structure and its complexity. I don't know anybody who could have dreamed up that complex of a story with all of those flashbacks and all those people moving around. Tolkien came pretty good, came pretty close with Middle Earth and all of that. Okay, but how long did it take Tolkien to write his book? Yeah, I want to tell you, let's talk about the translation of the Book of Mormon for a minute. It's 531 pages long. Oliver arrives and starts to translate on April 7th. And by June 30th, it's done. The whole book's done. Okay? And
What
as
year?
I described, it went through Mosiah, went to the end, and then came back to the beginning.
What year was that?
Okay, that's 1829. So the book is published in 1829. So at that pace, if you take out the other days we know they were doing something, it was completed in the 85 days from the 7th of April to the 30th of June, but they probably only worked about 65 of those days. And so that's at a pace of 8 pages per day. So let me give you the challenge. I want you to write the book of Nephi in 1 week.
Just when we copy it out of the book?
Well, you get the sense of the difficulty that Joseph would have had sort of pretending to do this. I mean, they were moving along at 8 pages a day. King Benjamin's wonderful sermon, you get a day and a half. Okay. You get a sense of how not only complicated the book is, but how fast it happened as well. Now, let me throw the last layer of complexity in on it. The book had to accommodate the free agency and decision-making. A book written by Mormon and Moroni had to accommodate the free agency and decision-making of people living in 1829. Without the words of Mormon and attaching the small plates, there would have been no recovery from the loss of the 116 pages. And so the Lord, in his wisdom, foresaw what was going to happen and have Mormon go hunt down and find those small plates and attach them so they're there to be translated by Joseph Smith. So the book is not only complex internally, it's not only very difficult to conceive of translating or even producing a book in that time. Think how long it probably took Tolkien to do Lord of the Rings. But in addition, you've got this overlay of complexity that only the foresight of God could have handled about how Joseph and Martin's wife and everybody would have dealt with it. So the Book of Mormon, it would be impossible. It's impossible to do without the Lord's help. What occurred to bring forth the Book of Mormon. Anyway, it's going to talk about that later, but we all ended up on it in the beginning. How complex is this book? It's extraordinarily complex. It took me 10 hours to go back and put into my head what is going on in the Book of Mosiah. I had to go look up charts, read articles, just to get it back in my head. And I'm not going to tell it to you today because we'll do those lesson by lesson next week as
Keep
Mosiah
that
went
in your
through
head,
3.
though.
Right.
Right.
But I went after this issue of complexity, and after 10 hours of study, I think I have the story of Mosiah in my head.
He's smart.
Okay. And I've had it in my head at different times of my life. That's the scary thing, is it can come and go. But nothing is as complicated. No book I have ever read has the complexities of this. Some are harder. There was advanced engineering mathematics, things like that. But I'd say this ranks up there with the most challenging of things you'll read. All right, I want to switch gears. I want to talk about these people for a minute. Let's talk about Enos. Who is Enos? He's the son of Jacob. Son of Jacob. Oh, by the way, how long did these people live?
A very long time.
Yeah, this was a long-living family, Lehi's family. Nephi lived about 75 years. Jacob lived about 97 years. Enos lived about 98 years. Jerem lived about 85 years. It's from the dates in here about how long it's been since they left Jerusalem. Omni lives 75 years. And then in the book of Omni, continues to pass through his family. Amram lives 73 years, Shemish about 80. Abinadon lives 90, and Amalekah, the last, who gives them to King Benjamin, lives 72. So this is a long-living family. So there's not that many people with the records during this about 300 to 400 years. So you got Nephi, Jacob, Enos, Jerem, Omni, Amram, Shemish, Abinadon, and Amalekah. That's the time. And Amalekah said he was born during the reign of King, the first Mosiah who came and discovered Zarahemla. So, tell me the story of Enos. Who wants to just take a minute and tell me? Enos has this incredible father, Jacob, who's taught him the gospel all his life. I think this experience happened relatively young to him. What happens to Enos?
Well, you know, it's